Graphs are a powerful way to convey lots of information about the distribution of a variable. By distribution, we mean understanding the places across the range of values where there are relatively more or relatively fewer observations. Histograms are for quantitative data. In particular, they're best for continuous data, like anything having to do with money or temperature. They're less good for variables that are discrete and likely have relatively few values. For example, the number of times a person has been into space, number of civil wars a country has had, or something similar. A bar chart serves the same purpose as a histogram, but for categorical data, or sometimes even for discrete quantitative variables with relatively few values. Let's look at the bar chart first. Bar charts are visualizations of the frequency distribution or relative frequency distribution of a variable. Each group is represented with a bar. The height of the bar represents the frequency, percentage, or proportion of observations that fall into a particular group. There are elements of the bars that don't matter. For example, the width of the bar and the spacing of one bar to another bar are arbitrary and should be uniform across all the bars. That said, the bars should not touch each other. If they did, it would look too much like a histogram. This would convey that the underlying distribution was continuous rather than categorical. The book displays two examples of bar charts for the gender variable. These are what we might call truncated bar charts because the y-axis, the one on the left-hand side, does not go all the way down to 0. You'll notice that the shape of these graphs is precisely the same. That is, the heights of the bars relative to each other are the same, despite the differences in scale. The one on the left is measured in number of people, and the one on the right is measured in percentages. The decision to truncate or not is an important one, and you have to think carefully about the implications. Look at the two different charts here. The left-hand one is not truncated. The y-axis goes all the way to 0, and the right-hand one is truncated. The y-axis only goes to 48. Note that these tell two quite different stories. The one on the left shows that the two groups are quite similar in proportion. The heights of their bars are different, but not very different. The one on the right really highlights the difference between the two groups. It's important that you're clear with your audience about what you're showing. To be safe, the left-hand one is probably more appropriate. The right-hand one would be all right if you draw your audience's attention to the values on the y-axis and identify that the values don't go all the way down to 0.